You're in the right place at the right time. Coming to you live today from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, in our studio at Corey Lewandowski Galactic Headquarters, and he's with us right now. Corey Lewandowski, the former campaign manager for the Donald Trump for President campaign. He's the guy that turned on the lights, opened the doors, and he engineered Trump's improbable, historic victory. Great friend of mine. I've been with him with that since the first day, and he has me this beautiful studio here right in his international galactic headquarters where we are today. And the other thing is I want to mention is that one of the best things that you could do is buy Corey's book, Let Trump Be Trump. I just read it over again the other day because it's such a great read. I read it on the airplane going to Tampa, Florida. It's the second time. It's about a 4-hour sit-down read, but it's really fabulous. All you have to do is go to Amazon or where else? Anywhere else?
Barnes and Noble, and any bookstore should carry it. You know, John, Dave Bossie and I wrote this book, and it became a New York Times best-selling author because people want to go back and remember how special the campaign was, what Donald Trump achieved in this election. When you pick up the book, the first 3 words of the first paragraph of the first page of the book talk about the media bias and how they say he had no chance of winning this election. And not only did he win 270 electoral votes, he won 306 electoral votes when they originally said he had the chance of becoming the biggest loser in modern political history. And this book is a recap of all of the great things that took place in that campaign. Peel back the curtain, you understand what it's like to fly on Trump Force One. You understand what the personalities of the campaign are like. And I tell the truth because that's what I do, John, because I can't be fired. It's already happened. And so it's a little liberating, and I think your listeners would really like it.
Let Trump Be Trump. You have to buy it. I read it for the second time the other day. Fabulous piece of work. Don't miss that. It's always great having you here, Corey, even though I'm at your studio here, at our studio all the time. We don't always get to talk to each other. You were at Trump's rally last night in Nashville. We played an hour of that at the 6 a.m. hour. Tell me how that went. Tell me about the enthusiasm there.
You know, John, I've had a privilege, as you know, to attend hundreds of rallies with then-candidate Trump and now a number with President Trump, and it never ceases to amaze me how many people turn out to support this president, to support his agenda, to drive hours on end to get through the security, to listen to a man tell the truth about what he wants to achieve for America. That place was so exciting last night. It's so invigorating. You know, you have to remember the president gets up there with almost no notes, and he talks for an hour and 15 minutes, and the crowd is just so fired up, so enthused, so happy. And it really brings you back to say, boy, this is the greatest country in the world, that you got a person who's fighting every day for our values, and the American people, whether we've been in Michigan together or in Tennessee last night or wherever it is, they turn out in record numbers. There were 10,000 people in that place last night in a torrential downpour in Nashville, Tennessee, to support this president, to support his agenda, and I was very honored to have been, being in the arena with him.
That rally was done. One of the reasons you went there was for Marsha Blackburn, Congressman from Tennessee, that's running for U.S. Senate against Governor Phil Bredesen, also former mayor of Nashville. That race looking for Marsha a little better now than it did a couple weeks ago, right?
Well, that's right. And, I think in general, if you just look back at where we were in January, John, when I was on with you talking about the generic ballot and where Republicans were to where we are today, some 6 months later, everything is moving in the right direction. And this president, his party is poised for a big upset come November of breaking the historical trend of losing 40, 50, or 60 seats in the midterms in the House. And you will see candidates like Marsha Blackburn with the support of the president holding seats against what is really the Democrats' absolute best recruit in the country, a former 2-term governor in Tennessee, someone who was well respected as the governor, but now is deciding to try and make that race about Donald Trump. And if that's the race that they want to have in Tennessee, I'll take Marsha's team every single time.
The Republican generic polling numbers, CNN had the Republicans down just 3 months ago or 2 months ago by 16. Now they're ahead. That is almost a 20-point swing in 2.5 months. Why?
Well, John, there's so many reasons. Look, number one, you could look at the economy, and you look at home ownership values, and you look at the fact that the housing market is on fire. You look at unemployment rates at historic lows, literally 3.9% national unemployment, historic lows for African Americans, historic lows for Hispanics. John, I literally just walked down the street here in Washington, D.C., and I'm a Dunkin' Donuts guy, so I grabbed a cup of coffee, and there's a guy standing next to me in line. He's wearing a hard hat.
And you got me one, too.
And I got you one, too.
Thank you.
And there's a guy standing next to me in line with a hat on, and he's clearly a construction worker, and he's got his outfit on. He's got steel-toe boots on. And he says, hey, how you doing today? And I had a suit on. I said, hey, I'm doing great. How you doing? He said, you know what? My business, he doesn't know who I am. He said, my business is better than ever. He lives in Pennsylvania. He drives an hour and a half to D.C. in the mornings every day to pour concrete here. And then he drives 2.5 hours home every day. And he said, for the first time in 20 years of running my business, we can be selective of the jobs we have because what Donald Trump is doing to the economy, that's not hyperbole. That's a real man who's working literally a block away, pouring concrete. His business is better. That's why the generic ballot is better, because more people have more opportunities. And he said to me, anybody who doesn't have a job today, by and large, is because they don't want to work. These aren't my words. This is a guy who's working construction, getting up at 3:30 every morning to drive to Washington, to pour concrete, to drive back to Pennsylvania, and he's on the road 4.5 to 5 hours a day to go to work every day. This is what has built America, the greatness of our country, because Donald Trump has cut regulations to give small businesses more opportunity to reinvest their money. And then you look at the international side of things, which really hasn't driven the domestic agenda when it comes to voting. But you look at Donald Trump moving the embassy. When they told him in Israel, when they told him it's going to be $1 billion, he literally laughed in their face and said, $1 billion, you're kidding me, fellas. Let's do it. And he did it for $450,000. And he did it in 90 days after they found the parcel of land, not 30 years. When you look at what he's been able to do, bringing Americans home, fighting for Americans, whether they have been prisoners in Venezuela, North Korea, Egypt. So many of these Americans have been stuck overseas in jails, and this president is bringing them home. And when they come home, he treats them like the American heroes they are, and he goes to Joint Base Andrews and he meets them. That is why the generic ballot is better, because people see a president who is fighting for them every single day.
That is the key right there, the fact that this president is fighting for their economic opportunity, their jobs. You talk about the number of raises. Wages have been up for the first time in 4 decades on a consistent basis, 2.5%. Also, Corey, 5 million people have received a company check in a form of extra money, a bonus. 5 million people. That's a lot of people getting a bonus from their company.
John, it's unbelievable. I know Nancy Pelosi thinks it's crumbs when you get $1,000. And, I've had the privilege of traveling with the vice president. He says, what $1,000 in the Pence household is? It's called Christmas. And that's what it is. It is a significant difference in people's lives. I know it isn't to Nancy Pelosi, who's from, San Francisco, and her husband is exceptionally wealthy, and she doesn't even think about $1,000. Right. But where I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, I never thought I would see $1,000, let alone have companies giving those bonuses back to people, reinvesting in their employees, increasing their wages for the first time in, years. And so this is what is stimulating the economy. We're at 3.9% unemployment. The economy continues to expand. You couple all that with the fact that this president is bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States and says, we're not going to produce cars in Mexico anymore. We're going to produce them here in the United States. Right. We're not going to allow Germany to bring their cars in. They're going to produce them here. And by the way, the other thing that this president did, which he doesn't get enough credit for, fully funding our military for the first time in a decade, because what the Obama administration did to our military by gutting it, it has a long-term implication. And this president, in the last 2 budgets, fully funded the military, and for the first time in a decade, our men and women who serve our country got a pay raise, and they deserve every dime of it.
No question about it. We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager for the Donald Trump for President campaign. We're at our studio in Washington, D.C. at Corey Lewandowski Galactic Headquarters. Currently, Corey is the chief strategist for the Great America Committee. That is the political action committee of the vice president. That is a hard money, not soft money pact. They raise money in order to give it directly to candidates that are going to support the president's America First agenda. That's the Great America Committee. Also, want to buy Corey's book. It is a great read. Let Trump Be Trump. Let Trump Be Trump. You can get that on Amazon. I've got 2 copies. And if you bring one to my studio, I'll bring it up here and I'll get Corey to sign it. I want to talk about North Korea. On again, off again. What do you see happening? Corey.
Well, John, this is a very delicate issue, but what this president has been able to do in the last 4 or 5 months is to bring North Korea to the table for the first potential conversation between these 2 world leaders, between Kim Jong-un and the President of the United States. Look, the number one issue that this president has said, we need to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. And that is for world peace. That is something that this president is absolutely committed to. I can tell you that he is not the only world leader who wants to see this happen. Japan wants to see it happen, and he is putting together a team that is willing to negotiate. But this president is also willing to walk away. If North Korea is not going to come to the table in good faith and negotiate in good faith, this president can walk away. And if he walks away, that means we keep in place the sanctions that are putting a stranglehold on North Korea, that are causing economic devastation to that country, that needs to absolutely have trading with China and with other countries around the world so that they can sustain their viability. But this president, with the maximum harm campaign that they have put in place, has brought Kim Jong-un to the table. And you saw this, your listeners have seen this. When the president decided to walk away, the very next day, Kim Jong-un said, no, we'll go anywhere, anytime. We want to meet with you. This president is a great negotiator, the greatest we've ever had. He will get this done, but we will only do it if it is the right thing for the United States.
Okay, so they're still talking about a potential Singapore summit on June 12th. That's only 12 days away. Do you think that's even a realistic possibility now?
Look, it's possible. The United States has a team over in Singapore right now trying to negotiate some of the things. We saw yesterday, the media is reporting that Secretary Pompeo, the Secretary of State, is meeting with a former very high-ranking member of the North Korean government in New York. I think that meeting is either scheduled for tonight or tomorrow. So there are continuing to be steps in the right direction. But the mainstream media will never give this president the credit he deserves.
Right.
30 years we have had a failed policy towards North Korea. 30 years, dating back to the Clinton administration. We sent boatloads, literally pallets full of cash, and said, denuclearize. Don't promulgate a nuclear arsenal. And they did it anyways. They laughed in our face. In the last 8 years of the previous administration, they stuck their thumb in our eye and said, we don't care what you're going to do. We'll draw a line in the sand. We'll walk over it. Nothing you can do. Kim Jong-un has to understand the resolve of this president. This is a man who says what he means and means what he says. And when he does that, they understand that this is not the same leadership that has led our country to the historic disasters which have been the U.S.-North Korea relationships for the last 30 years. And I think Donald Trump is going to get this summit done. And when he does, it will be a value and a benefit to the entire world community.
And it could happen as soon as the planned one on June 12th, or it could happen over the summer, right? I mean, there's no hard deadline with this, but I think you're right. I think it is going to happen. We're with Corey Lewandowski. He's the former campaign manager of the Trump for President campaign. He was the guy behind the entire campaign that made it happen. He is now the chief strategist for the Great America Committee, which is Vice President Pence's political action committee, which is designed to raise money in order to support candidates in the midterms who support the president's America First agenda. So he's dialed in on that. Corey, I want to get to the China tariffs, a little bit of debate going on in the White House. As you know, I've been critical of Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, and I call him TV Larry Kudlow, for kind of backing off the tariffs on China and getting the president to maybe do some deal with them that we know they're not going to ever follow through on. I think, when the president ran, his instincts on China were sound. We're getting screwed. We're getting hammered. Our cash is going to them. They lock everything out. we have to go with a system of tariffs. They've identified 1,305 industries where the Chinese are taking advantage of us through our trade representative. How do you think this is going to play out? And what is the influence of the people in the West Wing that don't buy into the president's policies?
You know, John, as you know, the president has changed some of his members of his team relatively recently with the addition of Larry Kudlow and John Bolton, two contemporaries of the president's who he knew what I call pre-November of 2016, had a real relationship with. The importance of that is even if a guy like Larry Kudlow fundamentally disagrees with the notion of tariffs, he understands one thing. There is only one man who is the president of the United States, and he is the man who is elected to put the policies forward. And so if Larry disagrees with the notion of tariffs on China because he's more of a free trader, he can have that conversation with the president, but at the end of the day, he is going to implement what the president and the president's agenda is, and that's a very important thing. And where we are on China is this: $500 billion a deficit. I mean, it's an astronomical number, and the president has been very clear. Annually. And here's what the president said. If we bring a car in from China, they pay a 2.5% tariff. If we send a car to China, we pay a 25% tariff. That's not free trade, and that's not fair trade, and we're going to even this out. And it's very simple. We are the largest economy in the world, and if China wants to continue to do business with us, then it has to be fair for both sides. And that's what this president wants to negotiate. And anybody who doesn't understand that doesn't understand what America first means. Now, look, we're a global powerhouse. We are the greatest country in the world. We are the world's greatest superpower ever. But that being said, we have to make sure we're taking care of our people. And that means free trade, fair trade on behalf of the United States, not doing multilateral deals where the U.S. is on the short end of every stick. And that's why this president's talked about bilateral deals, so between one country and another country, so we can negotiate directly. And you look at what China has done to some of our industries, and this president has acted already with the 301 and the 232 components, because what we know China is doing is they're saying, if you want access to the Chinese market, you have to give us your intellectual property, or you have to transfer the technology to us. Or we will take your technology, you will manufacture in the U.S., and then, or they'll just straight out steal it is the difference. And you look at the industries that have been affected between steel and aluminum, and how about a couple nobody thinks about? How about cabinet manufacturing, because it's cheaper to do it over there, so our guys are getting hammered? How about stuff like AstroTurf? How about whatever it is you think that we used to produce here in the United States? The Chinese do it at a fraction of the cost. They ship it over here. We don't charge them anything. And then guess what? That country's growing like gangbusters because they got 1 billion people over there, and we can't even take care of our own people. And this president said, we're going to put an end to that. And look, are there discussions in the White House about what the best policy is? You bet there are. And Peter Navarro and Bob Lighthizer and Wilbur Ross at Commerce all have conversations with Stephen Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow and a team. Of course they do. And that is what the give and take of a strong team of A players have the chance to do. But at the end of the day, it is the president and will be the president who is deciding what our policy is to China. And that policy is going to be America first.
Well, it has to be. We elected him on that. Corey Lewandowski with us. I've got a minute and a half. I got to get to these leaks, which is really turning out to be a drag on this administration. They're all internal. We had the one that I blasted a couple weeks ago on Kellyanne Sadler that was in a meeting that I was just aghast that somebody would leak that 5 minutes after the meeting. Then there was a subsequent meeting in the White House, in the Oval Office, where the meeting about the meeting got leaked to the press, and there were only a handful of people in it. So even the meeting about the meeting got leaked. This is when the president told Sadler, "You're not going to get fired. You can, get that off your plate. You're doing a fabulous job, and I want to know who the leaker is." Nobody came forward, and that got leaked. What the hell is going on in there?
John, I'll tell you, it's really disappointing because the high-stress work environment of the White House, of which I have never worked, but I can only envision because so many of my friends have worked there, should be one where you can have candid and private conversations with your colleagues and not think that they're going to be leaked. And look, my concern is I don't know who the leakers are, but I have the opportunity, and it's an amazing honor and privilege to speak to the president both on the telephone and in person on a fairly regular basis. I was with him last night. And I'm very cautious of what I say with other people around because I don't know who is leaking things. And you could take almost anything out of context if you weren't giving the appropriate way that the conversation was taking place. And I'm not here to either agree or disagree with what Kelly Sadler had said, but what I am here to say is if you can't respect your colleagues enough that a private conversation in a small closed-door meeting can't be kept in the confines of that, then you don't deserve the privilege of working in the White House or for the federal government for this president. And you can take your ball and you can go home, right? This isn't communist China. They don't tell you where you have to work for a living. You can go and do something else. You can go to McDonald's. You can go to Walmart. You can go drive a truck. It doesn't matter. This is the greatest country in the world, and because there are so many jobs available right now, we'll find you something else to do. But this notion that you're leaking on your colleagues for the betterment of your own self-edification, you're doing this as a source so that you can be propped up later on. And I think it's disgusting. I think it's terrible. And what I hope we will see is a continued change in that White House to continue to bring people in who support the president's agenda and find out who isn't on the president's agenda and invite them to do something else.
You got 25 seconds. How do you fix it?
Look, again, I think the only thing you can do is there's a couple inflection points which I think will happen. I think immediately following the midterm elections, it is a historical time where there is staff turnover, and that's a very common thing. And I think you look at that team coming in after the midterms, if that is when a change is to be made, and you go back to the campaign, and you go back to the people who have been loyal, and you start bringing them back into the campaign, into the White House and the administration, so that you are prepared for the 2020 cycle.
All right, we're out of time. I want to thank Corey Lewandowski for being with us. He's the chief strategist of the Great America Committee. That is the political action committee, hard money of Vice President Mike Pence. Buy Let Trump Be Trump. Great book, great read. Amazon by Corey Lewandowski and Dave Bossie. Do it. Let Trump be Trump. Hey, Corey, thank you. Always good.
Thank you, John, and I look forward to being back on with you soon.